So feel free to keep that in mind.
Okay, there's a whole separate from ucc.org, which took me a little while to figure that out, is mhn-ucc.org. And that's got a lot more resources than what we just had in our booklet, of what the committee had in our booklet. And the whole thing about WISE is to become welcoming of everybody, of those living with mental health challenges, expand our inclusion of those who are living with mental health challenges, and be supportive of people with mental health conditions, and to engage in ways to live our commitment to be wise about mental health. 1 in 4 individuals lives with a diagnosable mental health condition. So there are people, it's safe to say there are people in our congregation who deal with a variety of mental health and substance use challenges. Many of those people may be reluctant to seek professional help or speak about it with their pastor or the other members of the church. But if we have an atmosphere of openness and acceptance in the congregation, it makes members, friends, and visitors more likely to feel safe and free from judgment. We've experienced that when we've been together as a congregation in our prayers that people offer in the front of the group and on a microphone, so that we can hear what they have to say. And a lot of those have been, or several of them have been, about substance abuse or mental health issues, and people have brought those to us in prayer. And to keep people feeling that it's safe to do that, and that they really belong, and that they're welcome, and it's part of life's journey. So that's what the whole thing is about. And Joe.
So this arose several years ago within the United Church of Christ at one of our national synods, where this mental health network was created, and as a structure for congregations that wanted to become wise, to link up with their brother congregations across the denomination. And we, in adopting this covenant, we've taken a step towards reaching out to the mental health network within the UCC. So why is this a matter of faith? Every time our UCC congregations get engaged in something that many people regard as political or way too personal, or you'll often encounter the thought, well, why can't we just go to church on Sunday? Why do we have to engage with all of this real world stuff? I go to church to get away from real world stuff. Well, ours is a God who calls us to action, and action in some very specific ways. Our God calls us to compassion. Think about the biblical story of David and Saul. Saul is a man under a great deal of stress and having problems, and David comforts him through music and through compassion. The example of Jesus and the adulterous woman. Does no one else judge you? Then neither will I. So that is a clear biblical call to compassion, to justice. Blessed are the peacemakers, and those who thirst who thirst after righteousness. Our faith calls us to inclusion. The story of Jesus and the woman at the well. There is a woman he should not have been speaking to according to the norms of his society, and he felt free to converse with her and to engage her. Jesus often engaged with those of his time who were on the fringes, on the margins, not the people he should have been dealing with, the Pharisees, the tax collectors. So we are called to inclusion in our faith. And of course, a great deal of Christ's ministry was directed toward healing. Both the Old and New Testament have some specific examples addressing particularly mental health as an issue that arises in the course of our faith history. The story of Ezekiel after his confrontation with the priests of Baal. You know, he's been through this extremely stressful confrontation. And what does he do? He runs off into the countryside, hides out under a tree, and just wants to be left alone. Consider what that means in your life when you face stress, when you face when you're coming down from that big confrontation you didn't want to have. Psalm 88 is an interesting one to me because the whole psalm deals with the psalmist coming from a place of feeling wretched, suffering terrors, dread assaults that destroy me and surround me like a flood all day long. All sides closing in on me. My friends and neighbors shun me. Does that ring any bells for anybody? Here's a New Testament example, and I wonder if you would like to call that
Figure
up.
that out. Okay. No.
There, I think.
Here.
Yeah, I'll get it.
You get it. Oh, okay. Now I
There we are.
remember. There we go. Okay, you gotta
And-
pull it up.
Now we got to scroll that up a bit. There we
Okay.
go.
Probably a lot of you have heard this story. If anyone interested in reading it out loud, we can't see all of you, so if you are, unmute yourself and say who you are. I don't have any volunteers there, huh? Okay, well, I guess I could read.
I would read it. It's just very blurry on my screen,
Oh, okay.
so I can't make
Oh,
out.
That's all right.
sorry about that.
Then
It's clear on ours.
Yeah, Jesus heals the Gerasene demoniac. Luke 8:26-39. Then they arrived at the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. As he stepped out on land, a man of the city who had demons met him. For a long time, he had worn no clothes, and he did not live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High? I beg you, do not torment me." For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many times it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles. But he would break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the wilds. Jesus then asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. They begged him not to order them to go back into the abyss. Now there on the hillside, a large herd of swine was feeding, and the demons begged Jesus to let them enter these, so he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When the swineherd saw what had happened, they ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came out to see what had happened. And when they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told them how the one who had been possessed by demons had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, for they were seized with great fear. So he got into the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." So he went away, proclaiming throughout the city how much Jesus had done for him. So, anybody have any words or thoughts about that? I think we've heard it and we've interpreted in ways that don't sound real kind to people with mental health issues.
Any thoughts this provokes for anyone?
Well,
I'm
Jesus
struck-
approached the man. Others would not go near him, but Jesus went up to him and talked with him.
Yeah, some chained and bound him, and that was going on not too far from here, not too long ago.
Yeah.
Utica Psychiatric Center still has some of the chains on the wall, just to remind, not more than 100 years ago, what they used to do with folks who had mental illness.
I discovered when I was doing some genealogical research that I had a great grandfather who was in an institution in New Jersey where back in the 1920s, the practice was to remove certain bodily organs because this is coming from your spleen, or this is coming from an infection in your lower intestines, or there's a lot of strange things that have risen out of fear. I'm struck in this passage by the fact that even after the man is healed, the crowd is afraid and doesn't want to deal with it. Can't get this out of our sight. But Jesus encourages this man to go back home and tell people what has happened to you.
And there's in Luke's version of the story, he intentionally sought out the man. And that's what we might need to do as a church too, not just expect everybody to come to us. Because of Jesus' love and compassion, the man was healed. And we are also called to embrace those who struggle with mental illness. Even though this man wanted to follow Jesus, he was sent back to the full membership of his own community. And so it was that a person with a mental illness became the first evangelist to the Gentiles. That was an interpretive passage in some of the resource materials from the UCC Mental Health Network. And I have never heard that story talked about as this man becoming the first evangelist to go to the Gentiles, because we don't usually think of it that way.
Any other thoughts or questions that this passage raises for anybody? I think it hits on a lot of the issues that we are being called upon to address, on the stigma, the fear, the unwillingness to seek help. And that gives me a lot of pause. I'm going to try to switch somewhere else here for a moment.
You did it.
Well, sort of. I'll just do a little interactive something here. This is an issue, however, that's not about them. I think very much the question of mental health and mental wellness is an issue for all of us. And just as an illustration, in the covenant that we introduced back in January, we listed a number of conditions that we were considering within the embrace of this topic that we're talking about. So let me ask, anyone here, raise your hand if you or a family member or someone in your immediate circle of friends has ever experienced anxiety. Okay, and how about, keep your hand up, how about depression? How about bipolar disorder? Schizophrenia? Substance abuse and addiction? Trauma? Alzheimer's or other cognitive and developmental disorders? How about generalized stress and grief? Oh, come on now. I know everybody's lying if you don't have your hand up on that one, because that's been our experience of this whole last year, right? So this is clearly about us and not just the them. And I think we need to see it that way, that continuum of mental health that opening video was talking about applies to all of us. All of us go through bad term to use right now, but all of us go through rough times, times of anxiety, times of stress. And So we always need to be cognizant of that in each other. And I think that's one of the calls that we are facing as a congregation to willing to see that in ourselves, to see that in each other as we walk in the door of what it, or virtual door of our congregation. This is a difficult thing to talk about often because of the stigma that's often associated with it. And I think we have to be very frank about that. I don't know, there's a TV commentator that Margot and I listen to every evening and is otherwise a pretty intelligent person, but every time we hear this guy use the word crazy to describe his opponents, it drives us a little crazy. Because that's been a brush that's been used to paint so many issues and problems. I said something a little flip last night in a video encounter, and I have to apologize for that because we've got to be more guarded about the fact that there may very well be a mental challenge of some sort at the root of a greater societal problem. We have to be aware of that, and we're all to be more conscious of that in ourselves. Let me pull up a video.
This one?
Yes.
Breakings. Ah,
Go away. There we go. Thoughts? Is this something that any of us have experienced, or that we can reflect on here? Have you experienced this kind of stigma about mental wellness in either direction?
I think there's always a stigma, whether it's you or if I have like a medical student coming to me with concerns, they're so worried about their career that they're going to be marked, they're going to be labeled forever if they ask for help. And I think that starts early in medical school, and then you have physicians later on that don't do that. So obviously, I think we all feel it in personal, but I think in professional settings, it's even scarier because people are afraid of ramifications forever, that they'll be labeled the crazy one or they're weak or whatever that is. And it prevents them from getting help early on when they really need it. So I think that stigma that word doesn't even carry the power of what it really means to someone struggling.
It can be really almost a violent fear of what will happen if someone finds out that they're struggling with a mental illness.
There's a huge fear of rejection. If people find out you suffer from, you have a mental health issue. I know for me personally, when I was in the dregs of my depression, I was afraid to reach out because what happened if you didn't want to hear me? What happened if you just left me alone and didn't want to listen?
Psalm 88 is interesting because the stance of the writer of that psalm is that he kind of blames his isolation on God. You know, why have you left me like this? Why have you put these burdens on? I do think that that sometimes we feel a little put upon by the world when we're experiencing something. I know there are times that I lash out about things that are happening to me. And I'm not lashing in any particular direction, just at the injustice of it all. Why do I have to deal with this? Well, for God's sake, why isn't this working? Any other thoughts or comments?
Yes, I think it starts with small children who start using synonyms for people with mental illness as slam words to throw out. Oh, you're, of course, nothing comes to mind, but nobody wants to be labeled like that. It's a child thing, and somehow parents and teachers need to take the time, and it's not punishment, but to sit down and explain and talk about what it really is, and that, no, you can't use that word or those words.
Is there anything else that anyone wants to say about this?
Yeah, I'd like to add that in the Bible verses, it's like Jesus just says go away and the problems are solved, and that's not how it is in real life.
No.
It's not that easy. But I think younger people are taking away some of the stigma. Fortunately, I think it's getting like I used to like the worst things that you can't talk about, or you're going crazy because you found out this big information, and it's just you need to talk it out, right? So that's what I've had to do. I've had to see a counselor twice about things that I just felt uncomfortable trying to handle by myself, or didn't know where to turn, or didn't know what to do, and it was very temporary. And I think some people realize that it's more okay now. If you need to talk to somebody about something, and some things that are easily handled or dealt with are certainly, it is better to get them out in the open and get work through it, that sort of thing. It's some of the harder things that are still, PTSD is still got a lot of, clouds around it. And the harder, the bipolar and the manic depressive and like the harder stuff is still, I think, hard for people to want to reach out to those people who have it if they know about it, because there might not be anything that can be done. That's I guess that's my 2 cents into
Yeah,
the
obviously,
stuff.
Jesus healed that, in the story, Jesus just heals instantly, but it does take, counseling, medication, a variety of things that for a variety of people. And unfortunately, Jesus can't be here to do that.
It's more like a chronic disease like diabetes, where it's, we all want someone to go for counseling, get your meds, and be fixed and move on. And I think for those of us that have had these challenges in our family, it doesn't happen. It's waves, and it's good times and it's bad times, and it's times you think it's better, but there's a sense that you want it just to be fixed, and be over.
Yeah.
And so you get that long-term fatigue too, that it, and I'm thinking about that as a journey member, wanting people year after year may just continually to need support. And as a congregation, being aware of that they're not going to just go get fixed. There's going to be good times and bad times.
And that we need to be accepting when the bad time happens.
Exactly.
And we need to be empathetic to that. And we need to still include those people in our number. One of the challenges that the UCC Mental Health Network poses to congregations is, do you include people with these kinds of issues in your leadership? It's a thought worth keeping in mind, that maybe these people can even lead us. But we need to be able to be open to that.
I think using the phrase "these people" is also stigma.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Language is so difficult.
Get him, Margot.
Well, it's difficult to talk about things without falling into that. It's really hard.
And there's a certain social pressure to just tough it out, not address those issues when they come up for you. You share something.
Joe, there's a really big block of blackness on the side of your computer screen. Is that something you can see? Because we all see it and it's kind of impeding a little bit of the video.
Oh, maybe we have to make people smaller.
Maybe we need to make you go away. There we go. Is that
better?
Yes. Yeah. So that's the
Okay.
block. Yeah, that's what it
Yeah,
is.
we
It's
were
our little
trying to be able to
pictures.
see the whole group, and unfortunately we can't do that under this thing. Is that better?
It's a little bit better, but
Maybe what we have to do, Joe, is go to the smaller
You
view.
won't be able to see everybody until you stop screen sharing, and then
Okay.
everything will come back.
So we gotta
Yeah.
go
We gotta learn how to do what we're doing here.
to the smaller view. Wait a minute, just here. There, now play it like that, even though, because now you don't have to see the stuff on the side. Can you see it or not?
yeah, we can see the whole thing now. It's just on the
Okay.
side.
Don't go to full screen. That's the third time I've seen it and it still makes me feel, oh, so sad. Can you get rid of that, Mike?
I can try.
We have a friend who several years ago, they came home to find their 17-year-old son hanging in the closet. They never knew why. And you can't always spot those things. You can't always know what's happening with people. It's scary.
What struck me about that video was that there are times when he's perfectly fine, or seems to be, when he's sitting in the classroom talking to his friends, walking down the hall, smiling.
It's
And
called
yet
fake
there are-
it till you make it.
Yep.
And hopefully you make it.
Tough it out. Tough it out. It's your problem, not ours. Any other thoughts or comments anybody who wants to throw out?
Someone has a something in the corner that says ask to unmute, and I don't know what that means. Do you know, Sandy?
That means they're.
I think
muted.
that's where my cursor is hiding.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Sorry.
That's where our cursor was, I guess.
The Zoom thing. No. Action.
Okay.
So that brings us back around to where we started, which is this covenant that we have adopted.
Wider world thing.
We've made a commitment to address mental health and mental wellness within our own congregation, but also in the wider world. There's a short video we'd like to share with you.
No, not that one. This?
Yep.
Okay,
That's the World Health Organization.
all right.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, this was only made 4 months ago, and it speaks a lot to what is happening today.
We all have mental health. It is important to each one of us. So if you're facing a challenge, you're not alone.
So I thought the easy way out was to take pills and it would be all over.
The main problem is the one who carries the weight, as World Health Organization predicted that by 2030, mental illness will account for 13% of the total global burden of diseases.
Tried to get my mother's attention, which I couldn't get, and I would break things and cry and throw tantrums.
The National Center for Mental Health has revealed the increase in monthly hotline calls regarding depression, with numbers rising from 80 calls pre-lockdown to nearly 400.
I didn't care about anything, and it worked. People believed that I didn't care.
Many people who have mental illness do not want to talk about it. But mental illness is something we shouldn't be ashamed. It is a medical condition. It is treatable.
There really is nothing wrong with me. All I had to do was be a man and snap out of it.
And that made you feel worse.
That made me feel worse.
It's not about being always happy. What you are experiencing may be a sad chapter, but you are not a sad story.
The worst part about hell is not the flames, it's the hopelessness. And I think that is the part of hell that a person in depression really tastes.
Happiness can be found even in our darkest times. There is still hope. With the help and support, you can recover.
You are important. You are needed. You are valuable. So stand up again. I'll wait for you.
We don't have to share the screen anymore. Stop cheering, I think. And share.
So back to our covenant again.
Oh, did you want to?
Do we need to call that up? Has everyone got a copy of it or seen a copy of it? there's a lot of particulars that it went into, but I think we can probably, the covenant that we have agreed to engage with here in a few simple ways. We've committed ourselves to openness and welcome with respect to those who are suffering mental issues of one sort or another. We have committed ourselves to inclusion and acceptance. We have committed ourselves to compassion without judgment. We've committed ourselves to ongoing support and advocacy on behalf of mental wellness in the wider world. And that means keeping an eye open, I think, for opportunities to speak up and speak out, opportunities to be an advocate for individuals in our congregation, but also for the services that are out there in the community that need our support. We've committed ourselves to ongoing education because we want to become ever more wise as a congregation with respect to issues. I'll admit there's a lot I don't know about it. I'll admit there's a lot that I need to know about it. And if we as a congregation are going to have the openness, the inclusion, the compassion, we need to continue to educate ourselves about what we're talking about.
And one of the things we're doing to start that off is, as most of you probably already know, but every Sunday worship service from April 11th through May 9th, someone in our congregation will take a few minutes to talk about a topic that concerns them regarding mental health. And then the following Tuesday, we will have experts coming to do Zoom from 7:30 to 8:30 on a variety of topics. And we're going to talk about depression and anxiety, trauma and PTSD, substance abuse, Alzheimer's, and then what is NAMI and what can it help us with. So that's what we're doing in the after Easter now.
And beyond that, we're making an ongoing commitment to continuing future action, advocacy, and education in these areas. We're not 100% sure what that form is going to take moving forward. It might be in the form of social action, of forums like the social action forums that we have from time to time had at our congregation, where we're talking about a particular social issue. We might do programs like that with respect to mental health issues. We might take up a book reading group. We might take up periodic discussions. We certainly will continue to engage as a congregation in lifting this up in our worship and in our work. And this series of presentations that we're doing over the next 2 months are going to culminate in a mental health awareness Sunday on May 16th. And hopefully you'll all have an opportunity to tune in. We want to make sure that this remains open to people outside our congregation who might feel they need a safe place to go to talk about these things. These Sunday morning mental health moments over the next 2 months. We've asked people to be personal about it, to speak from their own personal perspective, and to tell their story. And we'd like to encourage that as a safe thing, and encourage members of our congregation who are watching these things to accept them in that spirit, and to take it in on that point of view. Two things I wanted particularly to stress before we wrap up with any final questions anybody has. One is that it's really important to us that the whole congregation engage in this process. We know that not everybody's got Thursday evenings or Tuesday evenings, or the time for any specific commitment to these things. But we want to make sure that the whole congregation is aware of this process, is participating to the extent they can, and that they have available to them these materials and resources so they can get up to speed. Because this is a congregation-wide thing that we're trying to do. We also want to make sure that those facing the challenges are included in the process and maybe even are helping to drive the process. This is, the phrase that I've kind of latched onto is, this is not for them, this is with, you're telling the whole world what to do when the whole world has its own perspective. We haven't committed to forming a WISE committee or a WISE task force. We've committed to becoming a WISE congregation. And that's our objective. And involve as many people as possible on as wide a basis as possible. As we have done in adopting 1A, as we have done in declaring ourselves a congregation, we hope to make a similar commitment here.
Does anybody have anything to add or to ask about before we do our closing prayer? And let us pray. God of love, we celebrate that today you are still speaking words of acceptance, wholeness, and inclusion. We give thanks for this church and the ways we seek to live out Jesus' commandment to love you and to love our neighbors as ourselves. Amen.
Amen.
Anything else for the good of the order, anybody?
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you for your patience in waiting out our
Technical difficulties.
rookiness about this screen sharing thing.
There is.
You
a
know
lot
what?
of-
We've all had stuff where we've done it the first time and had stuff come up doing it.
Yeah.
The challenge of.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good
Good night,
night.
everybody.
Good night.
Night.